Welcome back to People First University. I'm Michael Richards, and today's special guest will be sharing about the voting and the election process. Jennifer has served on many boards, the 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 United States Healthcare National Advocacy Board, and is the chair of the Ohio Homestead and also the chair of DD Council. Her experience, she will share with her experience about voting and the interesting stories. We welcome Jennifer today to our meeting. So go ahead and take it away, Jennifer.
Thank you guys so much. Nice to meet all of you. I am so glad to be here. I am going to share my screen. I do have a PowerPoint, so give me 1 second to set that up. All right, awesome. All right, thanks so much, first of all, for having me here today. Voting is something that I'm very, very passionate about. I'll talk about why in a little bit, but in Ohio, we have our own, there's some things I'll teach you that we have our own laws. And actually, this is a really great time to have this because yesterday, President Trump signed an executive order that changes voting a little bit. It will change our national voting laws. I'll talk about that at the very end, give you a real up-to-date, minute by minute kind of play as to what's going on. So first of all, just two things here. We have the Great Seal for the state of Ohio pictured up there in that circle. And then we also have the Ohio flag. And you notice that the Ohio flag has a odd shape. Most flags, and this is just a fact that's interesting to me, it's nothing to do really with voting, but it is the only flag in our country that's not rectangular. So it has that little, if you can see that little V-shaped cutout. What they actually did is they made it in the shape of these swallowtail birds. And these, the shape of it also, if you were a sailboat watcher or user, the sailboats often have this shape of their flags that they post on sailboats. But it's actually like this bird's tail, if you can see sticking out at the two ends there. So it's shaped more like the swallowtail bird. And I just thought that's really interesting because we're the only state flag that's not rectangular. All right, now to jump into voting. There are really only two ways to vote in Ohio, and that is being there in person during the election at your official election place. And then there's what's called absentee voting, which both you can use both methods. You can change them up. Like one time you could go in person, the next time you could be an absentee voter. And absentee means that you vote from your home, so you don't actually go to your polling place. So those are the only two ways that we have in Ohio right now to vote. Now, in order to vote, this is like kind of like a map of the different what you have to, in order to become a voter. So you have to be a citizen of the United States. You have to be at least 18 years old. You have to be a resident for at least 30 days. So you have to be living in Ohio and a resident of Ohio for at least 30 days before the election you want to vote in. You cannot be in jail or prison for a felony. And you cannot be declared incompetent by a probate court. So a judge would have to actually declare you incompetent and you would have paperwork, and then you cannot vote. Or if you did some kind of crazy crime against something that went against our election laws, and you had to go to court for that and lost your right to vote. So those are the only the qualifications to become a voter in Ohio. But let me be clear that if you have a guardian, you can still vote. That having a guardian does not take away your right to vote. So as long, again, if you're a citizen, you're at least 18 years old, you're a resident of Ohio for 30 days, you're not in jail for a felony, um, then you can vote in Ohio. All right, now the very first thing that you have to do in order to go through the voting process is that you have to register to vote. And there are several ways to do this. There are paper forms that you can actually fill out. And there's also an online form that is in our Secretary of State's website. So if you know anything about the internet, you could just Google our Secretary of State. And on their website is a voter registration. So you cannot just show up at the poll and say, I'm here to vote. You actually have to register to vote first. So other ways to do it, like if you wanted to fill out a paper form, you can get those paper forms through the library. You can get them at the local, the place where people go, the local Bureau of Motor Vehicles, which is the place people go to get their driver's license and state IDs. They have the applications for you. Like I said, the library has them. And then there are agencies that provide public assistance, like if you apply for SNAP benefits or for Medicaid, those agencies also sent out the voter registration forms. And you want to do that in advance of when the next voting election is, if you're not registered. And then there's also ways to check to see if you're a registered voter that are online. So if you want to just look up if you are already registered, just in case you forget, because I did it like about 30 years ago and I don't even remember what I did 30 years ago. I don't remember what I did yesterday, let alone 30 years ago. So I like to just check, and there's ways to check online too to make sure you are registered. You just have to give your name and I think the last 4 digits of your social security number in order to check to see if you're registered. All right, so there's some specific things. I can't talk about voting for people with disabilities without talking about some laws that we have. And also the ADA. Do you guys know what the ADA is when I say ADA? Somebody want to say what the ADA stands for, or what the words really are?
The ADA would be the Americans with Disabilities Act, which I believe was passed in 1990, wasn't it?
Good job. Awesome. Yes, perfect. Very good. There's an actual, the ADA says a lot of different things, but in Title II, it's broken up into like different sections. So Title II specifically talks about what the ADA allows for voters with disability. So when you go to your polling location, they must have accessible parking. They must have a route that you can get on it, just in case like you use a wheelchair or a walker. It has to be accessible for people with mobility disabilities. It also has to have an accessible entrance, so they're not allowed that they can't have stairs in the building, but they're at least one of the areas must be accessible for you to enter. They have to have a route in which you can get to, so they can't put stairs right in the middle of where people are voting. Their accessible voting machines must be allowed, and different voting procedures. So the ADA is one of the laws that makes sure that people with disabilities are allowed to vote, and it's made simpler. Now, there are other crazy laws, and we're not going to go through all of them. There's some highlights. So this first one, the Voting Rights Act of 1965, that was around even before I was born, and I'm sure some of you, it's been around longer than you were here on the planet. But it requires that, or it states that if you have a disability, you can choose the people that help you when voting. Okay, and this goes for either being in person or absentee ballots, and we'll talk about that a little bit more. But you can, if you need assistance with voting, you can choose whoever you want to help you. And it can't be your employer. So if you have a job, it's not allowed to be your employer. And if you belong to a union, it's not allowed to be an officer from the union that you belong to, but you can pick anybody else besides that to help you vote if you need assistance. So that is pretty awesome. Some of the other highlights here. The second one, let me see. The last one ensures that the Help America Vote Act, the very last box down here, makes sure that every place that you can go and vote has at least one accessible voting system for those. And we'll talk about what that actually is later. But this law helps you to, every place must have an accessible voting machine. And there's another one, it used to be a long time ago, that people with disabilities and others were questioned about their ability to read and write when you go to vote. And they're no longer allowed to give you a test or ask you things like if you have the ability to read or write. So that means that anybody, even if you can't read or write, you can vote. So I'm really happy that these laws are in place that protect people with disabilities and allow all of us to be able to vote. All right, these are one picture of an accessible voting machine, and they change quite frequently to different providers. So this may be out of date so far, but I wanted to give you guys a little bit of a look at what this looks like. So here you'll see a big screen. This is actually a touch screen. So now when you go to your voting place, they have the machines and you can use just a regular machine. You don't have to use the accessible one. But this is there for you if you want or if you need to use it, depending on your abilities. But the other machines, usually you just stand, you can use those as well, but I wanted to make sure to call out the accessible machines because I think they're pretty cool. You can put headphones on and it can talk to you. So if you need somebody to read the ballot for you, it can read it out loud. You can make the font bigger or smaller. You can change the color just in case you have trouble seeing different colors. If you're blind, like I said, it reads out loud for you. If you have trouble reading, it will read it. There's a little controller here. If you see that with the little blue triangle on it, it almost looks like a video game to me, a video game controller. But and also the machine can be raised and lowered. So if you vote from a wheelchair, then they can lower the machine to make it more comfortable for you to use. And they also have Braille touchpads, and the machine, again, not only does it raise and lower, but you can tip and tilt it. So if you need an accommodation like that, when you get to the voting poll, make sure that you ask them where their accessible machine is. They should have it out, but just in case they don't, you are allowed to ask them to set it up for you to use it if you don't see it already out there in the room. All right, let's talk a little bit more about in-person voting. So there's actually two ways you can do in-person voting, and that's by early voting, which means that you go to the polls to vote before the actual election day. And you are definitely allowed to do that. And again, this is in person when you go to your local poll. And you have to kind of look up where that is going to occur. You can look that up again online to find out where your polling location is going to be. They also usually send you out a bunch of literature in the mail about where that is. But make sure you also look up where you have to go and vote so that you can plan for that day. There's a lot of planning that has to usually go involved in making sure that you vote. And then besides early voting, of course, there's the election day voting. So you can go right on election day. All right, now when you go in person and say you walk in there and you have no idea what's going on and you've come either by yourself or you can bring a family member or a friend or a colleague, you can bring anybody that you want with you to the polls to assist you. But say you get there, maybe you're by yourself. You can also ask the poll workers. There'll be people that are sitting behind a desk Some of them might be walking around, but you can ask anybody there that is a worker to assist you, and they definitely will help. There's also a thing, just in case you come by a vehicle or a car and you don't want to, or you cannot leave your car because of a difficulty due to the disability you have, or maybe you're just not feeling like, walking through the crowd that day. You can also do something called curbside voting. And that is when there will be two people, a Republican and a Democrat, that come out to your vehicle and bring you the ballot. So you can just sit in your car and you mark the ballot with the writing utensil that they give you, and then they will take it back inside and submit it for you. So there's also that option. Now, curbside voting, there's a lot of differences across our state. Some locations will post a phone number outside for you to call to have people come out so that you can vote from your car. Other locations, you actually have to send somebody inside to go and bring them outside to you, so it's a little bit inconvenient. But look for signs around that say, there's usually special parking for curbside voters. Sometimes there's already people standing outside that can, honor your wish of curbside voting. They'll go inside for you, but that is definitely an option. So you can vote for your car. You can also go inside the polling location and ask anybody to assist you or bring somebody with you. And then remember, you can use the same voting machines as everybody else is using, and you can also use the accessible voting machines. So those are there are a lot of options. All right, now, I always like to talk about advocacy, right? As a lot of you, I know for myself, I was born with a disability, and I've been an advocate as long as I can speak. So what happens if you get to your polling place? It could be completely wonderful, right? Hopefully you won't have any problems at all when you get there, and everything will just go really smoothly. You'll go in, you'll be able to vote, it'll be a great experience for you, and you leave. But what if that's not the case? So what I say to you is that you have to advocate for yourself. You have to speak up if things aren't going well in the voting place. But beyond that, and ask for help. Like I said, you can ask anybody in there if you have not brought somebody with you. Ask for assistance. They could ask for assistance for you as well. But beyond that, I also want you to take notes or remember why the experience wasn't good for you. Because there are many different organizations that want to learn why it wasn't a good experience for you. Because we, including myself, the organizations that I work for, I want to make voting great for everyone. Everyone. There's not a reason in the world why you should not be able to vote. So if you do have problems voting when you go to your polls, or we're going to talk about absentee voting in a moment, there's some ways that you can report your experiences. So some is through the Secretary of State's office. You can go to their website, you can give them a call and tell them directly why voting didn't work for you and what they could do. If you have some suggestions on how to make it better, you can even let them know that. But you want to report the problems that you have at the polls. You can also contact your local county board of elections. So every county, all 88 counties in Ohio, have a board of elections, and you can call them directly to tell them the problem that you had at your polling location. Or you can also call an organization called Disability Rights Ohio. And the phone number is down there. You can look up Disability Rights Ohio. They also have a hotline available on election day to report difficulties that you are having. And sometimes they can fix them right on the spot by calling the people in your area. And other times it might take a while to fix the situation. But you always want to kind of say why voting didn't work for you. And if you have a great experience, it's also good to let people know that too. If voting went really smoothly for you, it's good to let people know that it was a great location and maybe why it was such a great location. All right. Now, if you remember, I know I've said a lot to you already, but there's only 2 ways to vote in Ohio. So we talked about the in-person. Remember that you have to register to be able to vote. That's your very first step, is to register to vote. And then you have to decide if you want to go in person or if you want to do absentee ballots. So now we're going to shift over to what absentee ballots are. All right. So anybody that is a qualified voter, so once you register, you will become a qualified voter. You are allowed to either go in person or you can do something called the absentee ballots. And it used to be like a while ago that you can only get an absentee ballot if you had a disability and some other qualifications, and you had to share on the form why you were asking for an absentee ballot, but you do not have to state why you need an absentee ballot anymore. So anyone can get, even a person that is completely physically able can get an absentee ballot. So you can, if you decide that you'd rather vote from the comfort of your own home, you can request an absentee ballot. So there's different steps to do that. So of course, like we said, you have to register to vote, and then you have to complete, there's another application for absentee ballots. So they're online at the Secretary of State's office. There are the forms that you need to fill out to be put in an absentee application. And then you actually have to print it out and you have to mail it. So it's a little bit of a difficult process. For me, I know that since I don't have a printer at my house, I will fill out the absentee application online using my computer, and then I'll save it and send it to my mom, and she'll print it out for me, and then she'll mail it. So there are kind of ways around. You don't have to do everything all by yourself. You can definitely ask for help and other people to assist you. You can also print out the absentee ballot or application rather, and fill it out by hand and then have somebody mail it for you. So you don't have to fill it out online. There's a lot of ways to do that. But then once you mail that in, they will send you the actual ballot in the mail. So you'll be able to fill out, take your time, read through the issues, read through who is on the ballot, and fill it out in the comfort of your own home. And then they also provide you with a special envelope. It's like this whole big deal that after you get done checking off who you want to vote for, you fold the ballot up and you put it in a special envelope that is, I don't think it's stamped. I actually think that's another one of the issues, that the special envelope does not have stamps on it. So you're going to also have to purchase stamps in order to mail your ballot in. But they give you the envelope and you have to sign the envelope, put your last 4 digits of your social security number on there and some other things, and then you mail off your ballot. Now, there's one more. Now there's a regular absentee ballot, and then there's an accessible absentee ballot, and it uses a different application. The application for this disability, it's called the remote ballot marking system. And I'll tell you how I use this one. So it's a different form than the regular absentee ballots. It's called 11G. That's the name of the form. And what this does is it's still an absentee, so you still vote from your home. But what they do for me is they send the ballot right to my email address. So instead of mailing me the ballot, it comes right to my email. And then I just open up that email and I click on the button and it takes me, my computer goes right to the ballot. And then I just use my mouse and I click my selections, like for the example for the presidential race, I clicked on who I wanted for president, and you can fill out the rest of the ballot, and you still have to print that out. So again, what I did, because I don't have the printer, I saved it, sent it to my mom. She printed it out for me, and then they also send you a special envelope, and then she mailed it for me. So the only difference is the regular absentee ballot, they mail it to you. This particular one, they send it to your email. So that's the only difference. And some people with disabilities, they have difficulty writing. So that's why for me, it was better for me to do it on the computer, because I can use the computer easier than I can actually write. So that's why I choose to use the computer version instead of the paper version. So it's completely up to you if you want to do either one of these. And again, the other option is to go in person, either early or on the day of the election. All right, now there's been some real recent voting updates. You have to, when you go to voting, and this is going to change, and I'll talk to you about that, but you have to show your driver's license or a state ID card or a passport. Now, this might be changing in the very near future, and I'll explain that. But right now, like if voting day was today, you'd have to either show a driver's license, a state ID, or a passport. So they made it so that you can go to the license bureau and get a free state ID card now. So your state IDs, you no longer have to pay for them, but you have to do a little bit of planning, because in order to register to be a voter, you do have to have a picture state ID. So you want to, if you're not a voter right now, you want to plan out the steps in order to get your state ID first, and then you have to fill out the voter application. And you probably can even do it at the same day at the BMV, to be honest, if you go and you get your state ID. And you want to have a current, so make sure that you always look. I know I always forget to renew on my birthday, and then I'm like, oh man, it's a week after my birthday and I didn't renew. So you always want to look at your expiration dates on your driver's license and your state ID cards, to keep that up to date. So you have to have one of those when you go to vote. And then drop boxes now used to be all over the place, at least in my community, but now they're only allowed one on the Board of Elections property. So you have to drive a little bit further maybe to your Board of Elections in order to drop off your absentee ballots. But the other thing, there used to be a law that only family members could drop, a certain list of family members could drop off absentee ballots for people with disabilities. And I filed myself, with the help of a law firm, filed a lawsuit that claimed that that was actually against the Voting Rights Act that I mentioned before, because that the voting rights says that we as people with disabilities can choose anybody we want to help us vote. And they said that only certain family members are allowed to help you fill out the absentee ballots and drop them in the mail. And by me, if my mother happened to pass, my mother was allowed to be, like, it was legal for me to have my mother assist me. But if I wanted my sisters or my caregivers, I have caregivers, and I wanted them to help me vote because they're here every day with me, and that was against the law. I wasn't able to have my caregivers assist me with voting. So I brought up a lawsuit against the state of Ohio, and we finally won. So, and what that means is that you can have anyone you choose to help you with the absentee ballots now. So if you do have caregivers, they can help you. If you have an SSA, they can help you. Your family members can still help you. But of course, the Secretary of State said, well, what the person must do is fill out something called an attestation form. So whoever assists you by taking your ballot to the Board of Elections to drop it off, they have to go inside and they have to fill out a form of who they are and who they're dropping the ballot off for. So, for example, if my caregiver takes my absentee ballot to my Board of Elections, they would have to go inside the building and sign a form that says their name. Hi, I'm Sarah Smith, and I'm dropping the ballot off for Jennifer Kucera. And there's a specific form that talks about if the person has a disability that they would fill out. So it's called an attestation form. So you can still have anybody you want to drop off the ballot, but they would just have to sign a form. I hope that makes sense. All right, now, this is the real up-to-date stuff. This just happened yesterday. President Donald Trump yesterday on March 25th signed an executive order that requires proof of citizenship to register to vote in federal elections. So not only are you going to have a state ID now, but it looks like you're either going to need a passport or something called a real ID. And a lot of places are switching over, or you have options to get this real ID. And I know the people that fly a lot are usually, it's suggested that they either get a passport or this real ID because it proves which country you have citizenship with. So he signed this executive order, but there may very well be pushback or lawsuits against him. Voting rights people might be filing lawsuits. We have no idea. So these things are not put into play yet, but there are going to be changes most likely that we're going to hear about within the next so many weeks. So I'm only pointing this out so that you kind of keep an eye out for different things that might be coming that again change the laws that I have stated today. And that also, if you do vote, the other change is that if you vote by absentee ballot, some areas allowed the ballots to be received after election day. Well, that will no longer be the situation. If you mail in your absentee ballot, it has to be received before or on election day. It no longer can be received after election day. So you really want to be sure to write down the dates so that you mail things in time for your vote to be counted if you do absentee voting. So I just wanted to point out the latest updates. As you know, things are rapidly changing by day, it seems. So the best way to know is to watch the news. Different organizations like this organization can also keep you up to date as to the changes. I certainly can help out as well. So you'll see some changes that are going to occur. All right, so this just is a few references. My email address is at the bottom if anybody has any further questions later on. Again, Disability Rights Ohio, on their website, they have a section about voters' rights. Secretary of State's office has great information for voters with disabilities. So if you don't have this link, just Google the Ohio Secretary of State's office. And that was just a little bit about the lawsuit that I filed that we won. So very excited about that. Hopefully we still have time and we can open the floor. I gave you a lot of information there. I know it's a little bit of time. So let me stop sharing.
Thank you. That was a lot of information.
Awesome.
You covered the elections process and voting, and you did a wonderful job. I really appreciate your take on it. And I know that a lot of people say, well, maybe I don't want to vote. But, when we look at issues affecting the developmental disability community, it is extremely important. You have local county boards that may need support. You have tax issues, your commissioners, all of those elections are important, especially for our field. And we did meet at the State House just recently, and talked to a lot of legislators that were very supportive. And Jennifer, you know, we're going to be in Washington, D.C. advocating, and hopefully we'll get a lot of support there as well. But just being a part of that process, especially if our legislators understand that this is a voting community. I mean, they have to be responsible to our needs because they are representing us. So it is important to kind of look through, and you know, some of our people first groups, you could do this at a meeting, but look through the issues. Ask your politicians that are running for office, or you know, ones that aren't even in office yet. Ask them about disability issues. What are their stances? I know that we held one conversation type, you know, with a lot of politicians, and there were questions about multiple different disabilities, and a lot of the people that were running for office didn't really understand the questions. They didn't understand the needs. So you want to know that before you vote for someone. Are they going to be on your side, or are they not going to be on your side? And it takes a lot of education. You gave us so many details of, you know, how to go about getting ready to vote. And there's a lot of preparation in it.
Yes.
You know, and I know a lot of my friends, they go to the polling places and realize that, you know, after they drove 10 to 15 minutes that they didn't have their ID. So they had to turn around and go back home. So there's a lot of preparation in it. And I'm really glad that you fight for that where there can be assistance as well. So thank you very, very much for all of you, all that you do, and for being here with us today.
Yeah, voting is definitely something that when I was young, I did not think that it mattered, but trust me, it matters. We
It
in
does.
Ohio, 14% of the population of Ohio has a disability. We are a great voting force. And when we all stick together and vote, it does make changes happen. I was one person that filed a lawsuit, and that alone made a change. So don't think that your individual votes don't carry weight, because they do. They do. And your
Absolutely.
voices to legislators carry extreme weight. Sharing your stories truly makes a difference. Stories are one of the most memorable things that people, no matter what, if they don't remember your issue, they're going to remember your story. And, take every opportunity to learn about talking to your legislator and actually talking with their legislator, because from somebody that's done this a lot, it is so scary when you do it for the first time. Like, I mean, I'm talking, sweaty palms, nervous, shaking. You want to just, get sick, but it is so worth it after you do it. And it gets easier and easier the more you do it. And it is so important. We can make change happen, but we need to do it together and to show in force. So I thank you all for this opportunity.